Please subscribe the channel, press the like button, and activate the notifications. In this video, we will present the second part of Kafka's On the Shore novel by the Japanese writer Haruki Murakami. During the first part, we talked about the boy Kafka, who is 15 years old, and the journey he made, and we lived with him all the details of the trip, its strangeness and out of the scope of the visible world in which we live to transcend the invisible world. And during this part we will talk about the old Nakata and his wondrous world full of amazement and mystery. Please watch the first part of the novel so that you will be able to enjoy the full picture of the novel. Incident Report. Race Powell Hill. The classified document from the U.S. Department of Defense, which mentions investigations carried out in 1946, of events that occurred in the Yamanashi region, where investigations were conducted for 12 days. The investigation began with the teacher Satsuko, 26 years. And through her statements, she stated that she accompanied 16 students to a school trip in the mountains to pick up mushrooms. And at 10 a.m. they saw a strong light in the sky emanating from a metal object. But according to the Army records, no plane had crossed at that time. Then all students started collapse. Their bodies became flaccid and their eyes were constantly moving to the left and right. After all the class students collapsed, the teacher had to leave them in the woods and went to the school to ask for help. The investigations continued with the school doctor, Dr. Nakazawa, who mentioned that he went to the school after he was summoned from the school director to inform him of the accident. And his first impression was cases of poisoning with the fungus. And when they reached the site of the accident, they found the children woke up, so the doctor examined them all. They did not show any physical symptoms. But the last thing they remembered was their picking up of mushrooms. Except for the child Satoru Nakata, who did not wake up. So the doctor carried him, and after they got off the mountain he was transferred to the university hospital in Kofu. The investigation now is carried out with psychiatrist Tsukoyama, who had been summoned by the army to conduct interviews with the children. He conducted psychological examinations for all students, and presented the theory of group magnetic hypnosis, as it created a memory gap. Dr. Tsukoyama theory was convincing to the army, so they stopped the investigations, but the exception was the child Nakata, who is currently hospitalized in the military hospital. And although his vital functions were working well, but he did not wake up. Even the doctor came to his mind the term soul exit, as Nakata just became an empty packaging. And after more than 2 weeks Nakata woke up and had absolutely no memory at all. He was just like a white page. In the year 1972, the teacher Tsuko sent a message to Professor Tsukoyama, confessing what had already happened on the day of the accident. She explained that she was surprised by her monthly period, so she used paper tissues to remedy the situation, and got rid of them behind the trees. And when the children started to pick up the mushroom, Nakata came back holding the tissues. She felt hunger and shyness, so she slapped him consecutively till he plunged to the ground. And at that moment the children collapsed on the ground. She also mentioned that she always regretted hitting Nakata, and she's still dreaming of his little face full of fear. The end of everything related to the Race Powell Hill incident report. On the street, the old Nakata sat talking with a black cat, and Nakata called him Otsuka. Nakata explained to him that he had an accident when he was young. So he became stupid, could not read and write. And that he sometimes helped people to search for their lost cats, and give them some money. And that he is currently searching for a 1-year-old cat half apricot color and named Joma. But Mr. Otsuka told him that he had not met the Joma cat. And he told Nakata that he has a pale shadow comparing to humans, and he must search for his shadow instead of looking for cats. Nakata explained to him that he is 60 now, and he is happy with his life, as he has a place to sleep and have 3 meals and gets his aid from the governor and a car to ride the bus for free. The next day, Nakata met a brown striped cat. He called him Kawamura, and asked him if he met Joma, but Nakata didn't understand what Kawamura said. Then a Siamese cat introduced herself as Mimi, and informed him that Kawamura had an accident while he was young. Therefore, he couldn't understand what he said, but she will talk to Kawamura on his behalf. Later, Mimi told Nakata that Kawamura met Joma several times in the abandoned grassland, and warned him of evil man who visited the land constantly and kidnapping cats. Nakata thanked her and went to the abandoned grassland, and sat there waiting. For days, Nakata continued to watch the empty land, contemplating the appearance of the Joma cat or the evil man, but he did not come across either. On one evening, a black dog came and stood in front of Nakata and asked him to follow him. Nakata walked behind the dog for a long distance. The dog led him to a huge house. They went down a wooden ladder to an office room, in which an ordinary-looking man sits, identifying himself as Johnny Walker, and he knows that Nakata sits in the empty ground every day, looking for the Joma cat to return it to Mrs. Kawasmi, and that he knows the location of the cat Joma. The man told Nakata that if he wanted to retrieve the cat, he had to help him. But at first, he asked him to follow the dog to another room. Nakata followed the dog up to a dark kitchen. The dog stood in front of a refrigerator and asked Nakata to open it. Nakata opened the refrigerator to find more than 20 cat heads. Nakata felt intimidated, and came back with the dog to the office room again. Johnny Walker told him that he killed the cats, to collect their souls, to be able to make magical flute. When he breathed into it he would be able to collect the souls of the creatures, and that he collected 5 cats and a Joma is one of them. But he hadn't killed yet, and he will save Joma if he killed him. Nakata surprised, as he had not killed a person before. Johnny Walker opened his bag and took out a narcotic cat, and told Nakata it's his chance to save the cat by killing him, quickly and lightly. He cut the belly of the cat he grabbed. Then he took out its heart and ate it. Then he cut off his head using a saw, and placed it on his tray. Nakata was shocked and couldn't talk. Johnny Walker told him again that he should kill him to save the rest of the cats, and directly he took another white cat, killed her, and ate its heart in the same way. Nakata collapsed on the chair. His breath was chasing, and his heartbeat accelerated. Johnny Walker smiled as if he was performing a magic show. He took out the 3rd cat and asked Nakata to farewell his friend the cat Kawamura. And before Nakata moved, Johnny Walker cuts the stomach of the cat. When Nakata heard a loudly shout, which froze the blood in his veins, and his hands began to tremble, he begged Johnny Walker to stop. Johnny told him again that the only solution to stop him is by killing him, and took the 4th cat out of his bag to surprise Nakata that the cat this time is Mimi. Nakata came quickly and kidnapped a knife from the desk, and stabbed Johnny Walker more than once. Johnny Walker started laughing, then he collapsed under the foot of Nakata, drenched in blood. Nakata dropped the knife, carried Mimi and took Joma out of the bag, and sat exhausted on the sofa, and then he drowned in the darkness. Nakata woke up to find himself in the abandoned land, and the 2 cats Mimi and Joma were next to him. Nakata sat disoriented. How did he get here? He clearly remembers murdering Johnny Walker's and his collapse on the sofa, but his clothes do not carry any traces of blood. The 2 cats begin to meow, but for some reason Nakata does not understand what they're trying to say. Nakata stood, carried Mimi and Joma, and left the land. Later, he took both cats to their houses. Mrs. Kawasmi thanked him and gave him some money. Nakata thanked her back and headed to the police station. In there he informed the responsible policeman everything happened, and that he killed a man. The exhausted policeman couldn't understand most of what Nakata said, and considered him as senile old man, and asked him to go home. Nakata also told the policeman that the next day the sky will rain fishes. At that moment the officer laughed. The next day, the officer was extremely surprised that a huge quantity of fishes rained over Nakata without a logical explanation, and he realized that he is in trouble. Especially when the news of the discovery of the dead body of a famous sculptor stabbed at his home received. He realized that he underestimated the elderly, and he violated instructions that he did not record a confession. He did not even know his name, so his only option was to hide the old man visit as if it did not happen. As for Nakata, in the next morning after the crime, he collected his belongings in his bag, took his money, his umbrella, and rode the bus to Shinjuku Station, where he tried to follow the instructions provided to him by the bus driver, as he needed to ride the train to Tokyo Station and then ride the bus to the Tomai Highway. At the station, Nakata was surprised by the large number of people and trains. He felt scared and left the station. Then he sat in the garden beside two girls, and asked them how he can reach Tomai Highway. He explained to them that he was stupid and could not read nor write. The two girls took him to the company building, and introduced him to Mr. Tajigochi, and they told Nakata that he would take him on his way and deliver him to Tomai Highway. Nakata thanked them and left with Mr. Tajigochi. And when he reached Tomai Highway, the truck driver took him to Fujigawa Rest. In the station, no one accepted to pick him up, so he went to walk. When he noticed the group gathered, approached to find them beating a man lying on the ground. Nakata tried to interfere, but the youth began to mock him. Then Nakata opened his umbrella, and then leech's worms began to fall from the sky. Everyone ran away, and when the leech worms stopped, he asked for help to the injured man. Then a 20-year-old driver named Mr. Hoshino volunteered to deliver him to Kobe. When they arrived, Nakata told Hoshino that he could not read, and that he left the Nakano neighborhood because of Johnny Walker, and he did not know his destination, but he must cross a large bridge. Hoshino told him that he was heading to Shikoku. Then he delivered Nakata to a garden near the port, and asked him to wait for him to finish his work. Nakata sat watching the sea, and remember that after he finished the primary school, his parents sent him to his grandfather's house in Nagano province, where he joined an agricultural school there for a short time, and during that period, Nakata realized his ability to speak to cats. And at the age of 15 he worked in a small company for the manufacture of wooden furniture. Nakata distinguished at the work and remains in the company till he passed the 50. When the owner of the company died, his son sold it. Nakata lost his job, but he got his end of service compensation. His cousin invested his money in a losing deal, and lost the money, which made the situation worse. For that, Nakata's middle brother stepped in and gave Nakata a small apartment in a building as part of his inheritance, and arranged for him to get aid for the disabled from the municipality. Hoshino returned, and told Nakata that he would accompany him to Shikoku, as he reminded him of his grandfather, and this is his way of repaying part of his grandfather's debt. Nakata thanked him. At 8 p.m., the bus that Nakata and Hoshino boarded arrived at Shikoku, and as soon as they got off, Nakata felt a sudden feeling of sleepiness, so Hoshino booked a room with a nearby hostel, and as soon as they entered the room, Nakata lay on the bed and told Hoshino that he would sleep for a long time, then surrendered to sleep. Hoshino sat watching and remembering how at the secondary school he got involved in a lot of problems, and that his grandfather assisted him, and he regretted that he did not thank him, and this is why he felt responsible towards Nakata. Later, after school he joined the Defense Forces, and he worked there for 3 years on driving the transport vehicles. And after he finished his service, he moved to work for a transport company. Nakata continued to sleep the whole next day. And on the third day, he woke up and told Hoshino that they are going west. The next day, they left Shikoku, and when they reached Takamatsu, Nakata told him that now he must find the entrance stone, but he does not know his location. Hoshino reassured him that he would not leave him, and he would help him till the end. Hoshino booked a room with a modest hostel and sat with Nakata, and asked him to describe the entrance stone. Nakata explained to him that the stone is round, medium size, and white color. And the next day, Hoshino did not find any information about the distinctive stones in the area, so he went to the public library. Hoshino browsed a set of books on the stones and legends associated with them, and Nakata browsed a book containing pictures of the most famous stones in Japan, but without any result. On the second day, they returned to the library, and Hoshino may have read more books than he had read throughout his life, and he felt that he had become an expert with stones and myths. But he did not find among them a stone similar to Nakata's description of the entrance stone. And at evening, they returned to the hotel. Nakata slept directly. Hoshino went out to walk a little, to be surprised by a short old man who addressed him by his name. And he identified himself as Colonel Sanders, and he knows that he is looking for the entrance stone, and will guide him to its place. Hoshino followed Colonel Sanders to a temple. Colonel Sanders told him that the stone was in the woods behind the temple, and they started to penetrate into the forest. Hoshino asked Colonel Sanders if he was real. He replied that he is a being who had no body, name, or feelings, but that he took a human shape only for the purpose of his mission, which is to monitor the relationships between the different worlds, and that he now needs his help. And after a while they reached a small ruined temple, and there they found a round white stone. Hoshino carried it and took him out of the temple. Colonel Sanders asked him to put it beside his head when he sleeps, and everything after him would work in a normal way. Hoshino carried the stone and returned to the hotel. He arrived after midnight, put the stone next to sleeping Nakata's head and surrendered to sleep. At dawn, Nakata woke up to find the stone next to him, and when Hoshino woke up, he told him what happened with Colonel Sanders. Nakata predicted that lightning would hit soon, and that it is connected somehow to the stone. Nakata sat in front of the stone touching it and talking to it. And afternoon an actual lightning storm started, and the electricity was cut. Nakata told Hoshino that something strange would happen, and asked him to stay with him, as he realized that he is not stupid, but he is a container had been emptied of all its contents, and that he possesses an imperfect shadow, and he may have crossed the other world and returned with only half a shadow, and that the stone will help him to recover the other half of his shadow, and that Johnny Walker took advantage of the vacuum inside him to push him to do a very bad thing. Hoshino reassured him that he had found the entrance stone, and once opened, everything will return to normal. Then Nakata asked him to turn the stone, and when Hoshino tried, he could never move it. His weight became much heavier. Then a terrible lightning hit of the earth. Hoshino felt the air become heavier and the room has expanded. He looked at Nakata and found that he is still staring at the stone. Hoshino gathered up all his strength, and with great difficulty he managed to turn the stone. Then Nakata told him that the door had opened. When the thunderstorm ended, Nakata went into deep sleep. Hoshino left the room and spent a while in the city. And in the evening, he entered a small cafe and asked for a cup of coffee. The music they played drew his attention. The cafe owner told him that it is the Archduke Trio of Beethoven, and started talking to him about classical music. When Hoshino returned to the hotel, Nakata was still in a deep sleep. The next day, Nakata kept sleeping. Hoshino spent some time in the city, and came back to visit the small cafe. He fell in love with the music the cafe owner displayed. At the next morning dawn, Hoshino woke up on his closed mobile ringing. He was shocked to find Colonel Sanders on the other side, telling him that Mr. Nakata should wake up, carry the stone, and leave the hotel immediately. The police searched for Mr. Nakata on charges of murder, and during hours the police will knock on the door of the room. He gave him an address to an apartment in the same Takamatsu area, and asked him to leave immediately, and the connection was lost. Hoshino managed to awaken Nakata with difficulty. He gathered his belongings and carried the stone and left the hotel to the address which Colonel Sanders gave him. And in the apartment, Nakata told Hoshino about Johnny Walker and killing the cats, informed him of all the events that took place with him, and apologized to him for involving him with the police, and his mission now is to close the entrance stone as he opened it, and he asked Hoshino for a great service, as they needed a car because they needed to go somewhere. The next day, Hoshino rented a car from a nearby car rental agency for several days, and bought a music tape for Archduke Trio of Beethoven. And in the apartment, Hoshino spent the rest of the day listening to music, and Nakata stayed staring at the stone. And by evening, the news brought the news of honoring the sculptor Tamura at the Tokyo Museum of Modern Art, and that the police are still searching for his 15-year-old son. And the search is continuing to find a man on a 60 who attended the crime night and confessed to the murder, and the police are still identifying the connection between them. At 8 o'clock in the morning, they left the apartment. Hoshino started driving around the city. They stopped only for one short break. The search continued throughout the day and the next day without stopping, and by the midday of the second day Hoshino stopped and decided to go back to the apartment, as he passes all Takamatsu streets. And during the return, they lost their way to find themselves in front of a large building bearing the name of his Kamura Memorial Library. Nakata told him that they had arrived at the place he was looking for. Hoshino read the sign that clarifies the working hours, and decided to return on the next day as it is Monday, and coincides with the library's day off, so they returned to the apartment. The next day they arrived to the library, passed the garden and crossed the ornate entrance. A handsome young man greeted them and identified himself as Oshima, and told them that they could enjoy the library until the closing time. He told them about the tour that started at 2 o'clock and was supervised by Miss Ayuki. Hoshino thanked him. Oshima was surprised by the way Nakata talks, and had a strange feeling towards him. Hoshino and Nakata sat in the reading hall, and at 2 o'clock, an elegant 50-year-old lady came down. She identified herself as Miss Ayuki, the director of the library, to begin the introductory tour that only Hoshino and Nakata participated in. She talked about the history of the building, and the most important works presented in it, and the paintings that it contains. When the tour completed, Hoshino thanked her and they returned to reading hall, and he started to think that she is similar to Nakata but in another way, as she looked empty from the inside despite her smile. At that moment, Nakata stood firm and rushed up to the top floor. Hoshino ran after him, and when Oshima saw them he rushed behind them. Nakata entered the Miss Ayuki office, and stood in front of her, staring at her, telling her that he wanted to talk about the entrance stone. Miss Ayuki asked Oshima and Hoshino to leave the office. She asked him to sit, and told him that she was waiting for him for a long time. He apologized for being late, but he needed time to arrive. He explained to her that he had to open the entrance stone a few days ago so that things would return to what they were, and that he had killed a man in Nakano to replace a 15-year-old boy who's supposed to kill him. Miss Ayuki apologized for her mistake, as since she opened the entrance stone, things became distorted. Nakata explained to her that he had come to put things back in order, and that she is living in half a shadow just like him, and they don't have the right to remain in this world. They should leave. Miss Ayuki told him that her only remorse was her involvement in a relationship with the boy Kafka, and that she wished that it would not affect his life. Then she got out a group of files from her desk drawer, present to Nakata as her biography, and asked him to burn them, and not to show to anyone. Nakata stood and held her hand, told her that now he can feel her memories that heavy her back. At that moment she finally felt relief. Nakata left the office carrying the files, asked Hoshino to leave, as he finished his work, and he needed to burn these files. Then they goodbye Oshima and left. And at the end of the day, Oshima went to Miss Ayuki's office to find her regressing on the desk. He approached her and found her dead quietly, with a smile on top of her face. Called the ambulance and sat at the office waiting for their presence and thought how he would tell Kafka Tamura. Nakata and Hoshino headed to a dry riverbed, and they burned Miss Ayuki's files. And then they took a taxi to where Nakata went to sleep directly even before they reached to the apartment. Hoshino carried him to bed. On the next afternoon, Nakata died, and Hoshino found himself with his corpse in the entrance stone. Hoping that Nakata would be in a better place, Hoshino packed his bag and decided to leave the apartment, calling the police from a public phone to inform them about Nakata's death. But before he leaves, he remembered his promise to Nakata to lock the entrance gate. Hoshino sat across from the stone for a long time, as he wished Colonel Sanders would call him and help him, but nothing happened, and at the end of the day Hoshino surrendered to sleep next to the stone. And the next morning Hoshino woke up. Nakata was still dead and the stone was still silent. He returned to sit in front of the stone, and decided to talk to him as Nakata did, and he continued to talk to the stone until afternoon until he felt crazy. So he decided to go out to the balcony, where found a fat black cat. Hoshino smiled to it and asked her about her opinion of the weather. He was shocked when it replied that it's a lovely day. The black cat told Hoshino that his name was Toro, and that he is able to understand it, because they now stand on the edge of the world and he knows that Mr. Nakata had passed away, and that in order for Hoshino to close the entrance door he must kill him. Hoshino did not understand who would be killed. The cat Toro told him that it's something had no specific shape, where he can chance his appearance and hide in a cold dark place, waiting his chance to cross through the entrance gate, but he should prevent him from crossing, and moves during the night, so he had to be extra careful. The cat Toro left, and Hoshino entered the apartment, prepared a large number of knights and a hammer, and at evening, he sat in the darkness at the sitting room, carrying his weapons, and after 3 o'clock at night he heard a voice from the bedroom in which there is Nakata's body. He opened the door to find something that is black and sticky, slipping from the mouth of Nakata. Hoshino realized that this dirty thing could not be from the good Nakata. This must have done by Johnny Walker, whom Nakata told him about. Hoshino gathered his bravery and stabbed it, but without any effect, and this sticky thing that has neither distinctive features nor a clear body, continued to come out of Nakata's mouth and advance toward the stone in the hall. When it came out completely, its shape became almost similar to the big snake. Hoshino hit it with a hammer, but to no avail. He still continues his path towards the stone. Hoshino thought to use the stone to hit it, but when he tried to move the stone he could not, so remember the night when the entrance opened when he turned the stone, and he realized that to close it he must turn the stone over again. He tried with all his might to lift it, but it was very heavy, but he could not surrender for his grandfather, Nakata. He must finish his mission. He gathered all his strength and lifted the stone and turned it. He felt a slight shaking in the building. Then the black sticky thing lost some of its power. Hoshino took advantage of that and chopped it until he finally got rid of it, collected its parts with a bag and decided to burn it before calling the police and returning to his life. At dawn, he packed his bag and the tape of the Archduke Trio of Beethoven, entered the bedroom, and saluted Nakata for the last time, thanked him for everything and left the apartment. Finally went to the beach and lit the fire. Through the 620 pages of the novel, we lived an extraordinary adventure with the boy Kafka, who accompanied with the boy Crow, fleeing from his home, to live in a city he had not visited before. He entered in the invisible world through his vision of Misaki, a 15-year-old ghost, and meeting the war soldiers, that seem as the time forgot them in the heart of the forest for over than 60 years. Also, his short residence at that mysterious city lying in the forest, which also seems to have been stolen from another world, and that he is actually within a few weeks became the most powerful boy at 15, as he wanted from the first moment. But not by the strength of the muscles, but by the strength of love and tolerance and finding a goal that always drives him forward. As for Nakata, whom an accident in his childhood turned his world upside down, to make him whimsical, easy-thinking man, and gave him an extraordinary power to speak to cats. And maybe his misfortune makes him meet Johnny Walker, who killed an innocent cat in front of him, and ate their heart, to satisfy his madness, and how killing Johnny Walker was a hinge point in his life, after which Nakata began his journey to search for the entrance stone, driven by a hidden force to find it, and during the trip the young Hoshino helped him through his adventure to complete his destiny. We would like to talk about the personality of Oshima, who decided to live as a man but with the body of a woman, his family and friends' acceptance to his way of life, and how Oshima is dazzling, as he is like a living dictionary where he compensated his weak body and disease, and his inability to leave Takamatsu, by accusing books to move intellectually, not just across the place, but also across time. And through Oshima's personality, Murakami raised the issue of sexual identity disorder, and he asked in his own way to respect others' decisions in life. The other character is Hoshino, a 20-year-old man, who spends most of his time working without enjoying life, nice and clear with his ideas. And what makes him accompanied Nakata from the beginning, is because he reminds him of his deceased grandfather, and he considered it his way to repay the debt. During the days he spent with Nakata, Hoshino lived the adventure of a lifetime, as he learned new things from reading books, and meeting the owner of the cafe who presented him to a music he did not think to listen to it before. Also, he faces things from the invisible world, as the entrance stone, incomprehensible meeting of Colonel Sanders, and confronts the monster that came out of the deceased Nakata's body. The novel world is distinctive, includes a man talking to cats, a boy who has a friend called Crow Boy, fish and leeches falls from the sky, a girl's ghost of a lady who's still alive, an object that does not have a specific shape called himself Colonel Sanders, a stone that opens and closes the door to another world, soldiers living in the forest for 60 years, a village does not recognize time or names, a monster comes out of the dark. Also, dialogues on the tongues of its characters provide you with information on philosophy, history, and music. But it also raised many questions. What actually happened to the boy Nakata to lost half of his shadow? How did he become able to talk to cats? Who is Crowboy accompanying Kafka? Why does Johnny Walker kill cats? What flute does he want to make? How does Miss Ayuki appear at the age of 15 while she is alive at the age of 50? What is the entrance stone? What is the city where Kafka lived? How does two soldiers missing from 60 years still wandering in the heart of the forest? Who is Colonel Sanders? What did Miss Ayuki write with her notes? Is she Kafka mother not? Thus, we realize the size of the blanks left by the questions that you must fill with your imagination while reading the story. Finally, we submit our final comments. First, the novel mentioned a number of sexual hints and that some of them, according to our personal opinion, did not provide any addition or enrichment to the novel. Secondly, the novel mentioned the intimate relationship that occurred between the 15-year-old Kafka and the 50-year-old Miss Ayuki, and that, according to our opinion, is not correct to consider it as relationship or love, as it is a bit odd. We apologize for the length of the novel, but we wanted to give the as accurate details as we could. Thanks for your generous watching. If you like the video, please subscribe the channel, press the like button, and activate the notifications.